the cloud and also having a remote audience per se, so just announcing that. A minute or so.
Yeah. Do we have anybody online? Any,
We have a guest.
everyone guess, okay. Well, we're all here.
Okay. Sorry, where is it? I don't see the broadcast option.
So it is actually streaming, but you'll have to, because it's gone away, because it's there. But you'll have to share screen, because
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, then we get to share.
All right, we all set?
I think we are, yeah.
All right, let's bring this meeting to order. This is the October 21st, 2025 Newburyport Conservation Commission meeting taking place in the Senior Community Center boardroom as well as online on the Zoom platform. This meeting's being recorded. The first item are certificates of compliance, etc., which we do not have any tonight. So we'll move on to public hearings. And let's open up the public hearing for Judith Welsh, 84 and 101 Curzon Mill Road. Notice of intent.
Good evening, Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. As the commission, I think, is aware, we amended the filing to also include 84 Curzon Mill, ran a new ad in the paper, and we've notified abutters. The abutters list now includes, I think, 2 or 3 properties that are over the line in West Newbury, so we had to notify folks in West Newbury as well. But regardless, basically the reason is when we had our last sort of full hearing on this matter, we had fielded the question about where you're connecting into utilities, which is a pretty damn good question. And so when we went to answer that, it turns out that the existing septic for the mill where the Welches live is, you know, less than ideal, right? I mean, I think it would have been legal to connect to it, but it wasn't our recommendation. So rather than having a septic that is right up near the river, that is a very old technology, we opted to eliminate that, put the septic over on the 101 lot where it can be further from the resource areas. A modern design, improved water quality. We can tie in the bathroom that's upstairs in the, you know, in the office space and the garage, and but also tie in the home at the mill building. And so we've added that to the plan. What you can see on this plan, if we can look, and if you can kind of scroll up to 84, which is the mill building up at the top.
I'm actually the one with the controls. No,
sorry, Kelsey. Okay, so right there, what you can see is we're going to demolish the existing cesspool, pump the contents, crush the roof, backfill with clean gravel, and you can see where that's located. And you can see, you know, don't have a scale bar up, but you can see how close that is to the building and to the dock. Not a great location to have a cesspool. It isn't failing, but it's just not what we really want to hook a new bathroom into. So that'll be abandoned. We will be putting a septic tank and a pump chamber on the 84 property. And that will then connect over to the garage and where the septic system will be. So if we can scroll down to the garage end, so it's sort of bottom. Okay, a little bit to the right now. Yeah, okay, so we've got the proposed garage. You may recall we're in BLSF, so this thing is gonna be pile or, you know, pier supported, basically an open structure. This is not Plum Island, so we can have footings, but it's gonna be columns. The plan right now is piles. we've done all the flood calcs to make sure at every foot of incremental, you know, every incremental elevation foot within BLSF, we are compensating, more than the fill amount from the structure. And then you can see where the septic system will be going off to the left. The flood calcs have all been updated and we have, we still meet all those requirements. The updated table is on that plan, probably in the bottom left. So you can see, you know, between elevation 9 and 10, we're cutting 91 cubic feet, we're filling 3.4. And it's the nature of the lower elevation is in order to compensate at the higher elevations, we have to dig a bigger area, which means we're creating way more flood storage at the lower, just in order to be able to get the upper, because you can't just, you know, we have to kind of finagle our way into that areas to the cut. 10 to 11, with 65 cubic feet of fill, 80 cubic feet of cut, and then 110 cubic feet of fill at the higher elevations, and 125 is being created. The other issue that we had talked about, if we can scroll kind of up and to the right near the water, there's a propane tank and a generator. So you may recall that there had been an issue that we had not been made aware of, but apparently there was a big storm, there was power failure, nothing was working, including the septic and all that kind of stuff. Everything was kind of failing, and the city allowed them to do some emergency work, but it didn't, conservation wasn't involved to put in a generator and a propane tank. So the question was, are those things in the flood? And the generator is on a platform, and the bottom of the platform is just above the flood at 13.25. The propane tank is on a stand, and the bottom of the tank is 0.2 of a foot into the flood. It's such a small amount that it's not gonna make the tank buoyant in the event of a flood.
Depends on how empty it is, maybe.
I mean, even if it's totally empty, if it's just 0.2 of a foot, it's not, you know, it's not enough, I think, to.
Sorry, this is based on flood trends on the existing flood maps, meaning trends up until now.
Right, I mean, now the thing is, if the commission would like that elevated further, then we would just ask that you do a condition that asks that that be done, and then we can have the propane company do it. I can't imagine it's that difficult. They probably have to shim the stand up just a little bit, and we could get it above flood, but it was really 0.2 of a foot, so it's pretty minimal. So those ended up not being an issue. All other aspects of the plan stayed the same. We had some plantings, I think, that we had included early on in the whole discussion. All that has not changed. So I think we really have just been waiting for the septic design to be done. That's being filed with the Board of Health. And part of the problem was the turnover in the health department coincided with the contractor who had been doing the test pits for the city, you know, witnessing the test pits for the perk tests was no longer on board as well. So we kind of had to wait for the new health director. The new health person actually, I guess, can witness these things too. So we have taken care of that. Got a good perk and got a design, and Steve Sawyer, the engineer, did the design. Frankly, if I needed to get a septic system, you'd be the guy to call. So, you know, I feel pretty good about the project overall. In fact, you will see the plant 2 native shrubs in that area, and I think there was a tree as well that we had agreed to plant somewhere early on in the hearings.
So I had one question about the perk test, and I know very little
Yeah,
about perk tests and septic systems.
yeah.
I mean, it was done during a drought. Do they take that into account?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing as when we look at wetland soils. It has to do with the modeling, the iron staining in the soils, basically the signs of groundwater. It doesn't have to do with the actual groundwater. It has to do with So you have to find your estimated seasonal high water, and then whether or not something perks is based on the permeability of the soil, not the time of year. You don't do your perk test in the groundwater, you do your perk test above the groundwater. So you're doing two things when you do your test, but you're trying to find where your groundwater is, which you can find during any drought. The only exceptions are if you have a highly disturbed site where soils haven't formed to those conditions, in which case. It's really difficult to establish where groundwater is, and in those cases, sometimes you have to put in monitoring wells and devices to actually record it and calculate it, or you may remember we use, on the Evergreen Commons project, we use something called the Frimpter method, where you go to USGS wells that are in the general area. And that was bizarre that you're able to calculate as accurately as that did. If you remember, it lined up within like a foot of estimates on site when we did that, and the wells that we used were like, I want to say Georgetown and somewhere else. To think that you can extrapolate groundwater with that method, even as a geologist, I'm not sure I quite get it, pulled by it, but yeah, in a situation like this where it's relatively undisturbed, there's nothing to do with drought, not drought.
I had a question about, there were two pipes that were laid in. Triangle. Here's some. One was labeled coming from the garage.
Oh, so in the plan view,
Yeah,
all right, so let's go over there.
not, the pipes, the labels were up by the house. That's the plan that I looked at. Keep going slowly more to the left.
Oh, so you have to have a return for this, I think this is a Presby system. So you have, so you have pressure dosing to the leach field
Yeah,
and gravity sewer from garage, so you were basically sending the sewage back to the garage to go into the tank. By gravity, then into the pump station that then pressure doses the septic.
wouldn't that find me again?
Okay, you're in the garage and you flush the toilet.
Right.
It's going over towards the house across the street.
Why not directly into the leaching field?
Because it has to go into the tank where you settle out your solids, then into the pump chamber that takes the liquids and pressurizes it, so it goes into the pressure dose field of the septic system. So if we could do it, but we would need another tank and another pump. And it complicates the design. This way you have one feed for your septic that's going into the field.
That just didn't make any sense. I mean, it does now, but when I saw that, I said, what?
Circle of life,
Yes.
sort of, yeah.
And the dosing is what?
So pressure dosing is essentially, fancy way of saying it, essentially uses pressurized, piping with like sprinkler heads to dose the field, uniformly.
Oh, you're just spraying the effluent all over the field.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it allows you to have a smaller footprint and a more efficient system. The way it works.
So you've got you're gonna be a 1,500 gallon tank that has, where is the outlet on that goes into the pump tank?
Yeah, so.
At what level?
So basically, your sewage goes into the tank here.
Yeah.
Sewage from the garage goes into the tank here, there'll be baffles where it goes in, right? Then it goes in and out through another baffle system, that all takes care of getting rid of all the solids and stuff that floats, and it gives you the clear liquid
Yeah,
in between.
okay.
That goes into this 500 gallon pump chamber. And then the pump chamber sends that septic minus the floaters and the sinkers into the system.
So that pump isn't running all the time, it would have run.
No, it probably has like a float switch when it reaches a certain number of gallons and it runs. And I'm sure it's gonna function an awful lot better than the existing system.
Yeah,
And
I went out there after that first meeting where, you know, I said, there's no sewer line.
Yeah.
You didn't believe me.
No, well, I was actually surprised that in Newburyport, we had an area without sewage, and the thing is, I have seen places like in Amesbury. They have some fairly long areas of cross-country sewer lines, so they're not in the road. And I was just thinking it must just be a cross-country sewer line.
Yeah.
And like, there's a cross-country sewer line that runs into, that dual run neighborhood. From the pump station on Hale Street.
Yes,
It's not very far, but it's,
yeah,
and if you go in the middle of the wetland, there's a little island, and in the middle of the island is a manhole. So there are cross-country sewers, and I just thought there must be one. Well,
The state park headquarters doesn't have sewer.
yeah,
They're on septic, so.
and when you had asked about it, first thing I was thinking, well, they wouldn't show a bathroom if we didn't have sewer.
Anyway, after that, I went out and looked around and on the house side of the property, I said, there's no room for septic.
Yeah, no, it's a cesspool. I mean, this is an old mill building, right? I'm sure at one point in the. Probably not too long ago, probably 67 years ago, they probably had a straight pipe. So,
That's sort of what I was looking for.
yeah. No, I mean, at least it wasn't a straight pipe anymore, but still, there's not an awful lot of it, you know. Of filtering and attenuation that occurs when you're that close. To the water, so I'm thrilled to see this project results in, you know, not just a garage for the client that meets their need, but actually a new septic system. And it's in the cover email that I did upload up into the system, but basically within the regulations, septic upgrades such as this, where you're taking an old septic and improving it to make it compliant with Title V, is presumed to meet the regulations. All of, you know, within the Wetland Protection Act regs. The only thing that's not presumed to meet the interest are the sort of BMPs during construction. So.
Julie, I see if your hand raised.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kelsey. So Tom, I just have one question about the cut and fill and the compensatory flood storage, the area that you are. Could you point out specifically the areas where that compensatory flood storage will be taking place, and then how that is being treated, vegetated, stabilized, whatever, during and after construction?
Yeah, the bulk of it's under the garage, so if we can go over, so there's a little bit of fill with the septic itself. You can see there's kind of a grade line that runs around that. You can see, but then you see elevation, 9, 10, and 11, and actually at the grading around the septic looks actually like maybe a combination of fill and cut. But the green lines there are the grading. And if you look at what we're doing is we're bringing in elevation 9 further in, we're bringing elevation 10 further in, and then we're bringing elevation 11 further in. And then elevating the structure up on piles. And underneath, I believe it's a gravel or it may even be concrete, but it's just a, you know, it's gonna be under a garage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and then any of the areas that are graded within what's currently lawn would just be restored back to lawn.
Got it. Okay, do you have that? I mean, maybe that could be marked on the plan in terms of where you're going to revegetate. Or if it's not, maybe it's in the narrative already that any areas disturbed for the compensatory flood storage or through construction will be revegetated. I don't know if it's in there.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to, just to make sure, we'd be happy to accept a condition that, you know, all areas that are disturbed outside the footprint of the garage and, you know, would be revegetated. Unless
Okay. Got it. And that makes sense. And then, so I think that's a good special condition. And then and you mentioned 2 shrubs and 1 tree. And I remember a long time ago, we had talked about plantings, and I guess there was 1 tree that was going to be planted, but could you remind us like where that was and what tree it was supposed to be?
I'm stretching my memory that there's 2 native shrubs down near the generator right there. And the tree, I think if we look maybe down into the right a bit, I thought we were putting it in there.
I did too,
Um,
but let's mark it on the plan or identify it somehow in the species too. I don't know if Steve had any sort of preference, or I think this was a discussion that Steve was having with you guys.
yeah, I think what I'd like to do, since I'm not seeing it, and I think it may have been when we made that offer, it may have been that they still wanted to try to figure out where to put a tree. Could we condition that you know, prior to planting the replacement tree, you know, we'll show it on location for review and approval by the conservation agent
Prior to what?
prior to being installed.
I would rather have it be prior to issuance of the order. Because that should be pretty easy to identify the location, pick a tree and send it over to Kelsey. And then she
Yeah,
can,
I thought we had
Country.
something on here, but you know, it's been one of those things that I knew that everything like the back of my hand when we first filed, and then you
yeah,
know,
right, it's
we've
been a
been
while.
so long getting the septic stuff done. Yeah, so we can, if you wanted to do that and hold issuance until we get you an updated plan showing tree location, we can do that.
As long as it's some appropriate native.
Yeah, I mean, anything like. So trees that would do well there, Amelanchier on the smaller end,
What's in on.
Amelanchier, it's also called shadbush. It grows at the biggest to a 25 to a 35 foot. It's a flowering tree that you can get it multi-stem and almost looks like a shrub, or you can get it single stem. There's a lot of them on Plum Island. They're salt tolerant, and they just do well with wet feet. You find them in the blowouts on Plum Island. Blowouts are where the sand has been removed down till you reach groundwater, so you get kind of an isolated wetland type deal going on, and there's a lot of Amelanchier on Plum Island in that. Red oak would be another good one, or Nyssa sylvatica. Those are salt tolerant ones. There's not a lot of salt in the river up in this area, but I would prefer to have something that's got some salt tolerance.
Yeah.
Red maple would still be fine. You know, red maples are more salt tolerant than the literature says. But you know, just not in Norway. So we do an appropriate native.
Okay.
Black cherry is another thing that would do really well, but it's not really what people love to plant.
What is the tree that's being removed in the proposed driveway?
I wanna say it's an oak, but it may be a maple. If we get back to the photographs, I think it may be in the photographs, and we could.
Mm. Something that's as comparable, I would think, to that as possible, just habitat wise, to keep things consistent would be good. So if that's an oak, maybe we use the red oak, or red maple rather than the shadbush.
Yeah, I mean, I would point out that there's an awful lot of wooded area on that lot down along water.
Did you have photos on OpenGov?
Yeah, this should be,
Narratives,
let's see. Keep going. Site plan, no. John Heritage, no. No, narrative, no.
Another supporting, it's not that.
No, it's just the narrative. It wouldn't be in the narrative. Okay. You can keep going down. There's a lot of attachments here, I think. Is there a second page? Is that?
I don't see any photos.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing photos for
Really?
this one.
Are you sure you uploaded photos? Cause I'm not.
I know they were in a presentation file I had emailed in, but maybe that may not have gotten uploaded.
That might be part of it, and that's why I had known it previously, that's why I recommend uploading
Yeah.
everything to the open
Yeah.
hub, yeah.
I mean, if you guys want me to take a second, I can open up my laptop and I'm sure I can pull it up and probably answer it, but it's a deciduous tree, it's pretty good size, from what I remember, and it's right up near the street.
Well, there's two, there's a big one, and then there's the one that's right next to the telephone pole.
Yeah,
Is it the one next to the telephone pole, the one?
yeah, the one next to the telephone pole is in the footprint of the, apron.
Okay. And
Right.
then there's a much larger tree uphill a little bit.
Right, and that one right now is not being shown, so I think there's the trees on either side that are not currently coming out. If you look. And Julia, well, hopefully you can follow to the left of the proposed driveway. Right here, yeah, think that's the one you're thinking of. That
Yeah.
was pretty good size. I don't think that's coming out, but it is close to the septic, so there may be some. There may be some impact in terms of the root system, and I think what we could say is if the additional tree has to be removed for the septic, that we would also plant a second tree. If you wanted to condition that. And, but we'll show you the location for at least for the first tree.
I have this up. The street view.
Yeah, it looks like a note.
Do you know which one it is? Scroll over to.
Oh, you should turn around facing the other way. We're looking back towards the mill. Can you look towards the mill?
Yep. Oops. That's a big little. We'll see where we should be.
Yeah, all right. Will this let you walk?
Oh, it's good thing.
Okay, yeah, this. Yeah, see the one right next to the telephone pole? Yeah, so that on the plan, if we can go. Flip tabs back to the plan. I believe that's what has to. So the pole and the tree, the pole has to be relocated. We can't tell you where that's gonna go because that'll be entirely up to grid. But the tree goes, that's the tree that definitely goes. And then the tree that may potentially go, if we go back to street view, and you see the fence, right? And it's kind of hiding on the other side of the telephone pole. But there's a tree kind of right next to the shed right there. And that's a potential removal, just kind of right above.
This one here?
No, you can actually, it's this one.
Oh, this one, I think.
Can get quite close enough.
Yeah.
To do a side view.
Zoom out a little bit, I think there's another tree.
Sorry, you're looking for the street view
On
again.
the uphill side here.
Yeah, and I don't think that if you look at the work area, that's not.
You're talking about this one?
Oh, which
It's not in the picture.
Oh,
right now.
okay.
Yeah, you have to, if you rotate, you'll see it
Yeah,
right
that,
there. Yeah, I think that's. Near off property, if it's not off property, that's not gonna be impacted.
okay.
Yeah, I think the only risk of the other one that would be impacted is that one over by the shed. Just because it is fairly close to the septic.
Is that shed going, city?
Shed's going, yeah, the septic has to go in there and, so the shed, I think, is shown as going out and, again, so now that we look at this, we go back to the site plan and then take a look at that. The green grading area and kind of where the limit of work is, and you can see kind of the outer limit of the septic goes pretty close to that tree, which is why I'm a little nervous about it. The one by the shed, but the footprint also goes right up to the shed, so I believe the shed is gonna go.
Is there any chance that the septic could go under the garage,
Um,
get further away from,
so the problem with that is we can't, because we're dropping the grades. And we need the separation to groundwater. So we have to have that as high up, but we also need to compensate for flood storage. So it really is the better place for it.
You probably want access to it too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think it's allowed under a structure. Right?
I'm not sure if there are provisions that would allow it if it was an open structure, but it's not ideal.
Yeah,
It's certainly better than a cesspool, but. But I think,
That's a low bar.
yeah, no, but I think, and the other thing to keep in mind is the garage, look at your buffer line. Bringing it under the garage doesn't really make it any closer or any further away, because the river just upstream of the dam is pond-like, so it kind of goes out on the side, so you've got buffer coming in from the bottom of your screen and from the left of your screen. And if you look at that buffer line, it may actually be further away where it's located than if we tucked it under the garage. It'd certainly be close. I mean, the only place it would be better is if the city land, which is right to the right of that. Or the opposite, pretty much that. Environmentally,
yeah.
I'm saying.
How many years do you wanna wait before?
Yeah, no, so, but yeah, so I think we've got a good project. These guys get a garage, they obviously. If you walk down there, you know they've got a really tight living space, and this gives them. Something they've sought after for a long time, which is some decent storage and a place to park the car in bad weather. And a home office and an old mill building where they really don't have a lot of extra space, so. And then on top of it, we get a new septic system.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
And what I'll offer is we'll mark a plan up. With 2 proposed tree locations. One that will definitely go in. And one that will go in conditional if the other one has to be removed. And that way, and then if you guys voted to just hold issuance till we get that plan to you, that would be. A way to deal with that.
That's perfect. I think that makes it a lot easier. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we have any comments from the public? Any hands up? Yeah. What would you like to do?
Motion to issue an order of conditions for 101 and 84 Curzon Mill Road with the special conditions as discussed related to tree planting and revegetation of disturbed areas.
Second,
second,
Okay, roll call. Barb Riley,
yes,
Julie Goffredson,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
yes.
Janet Daisley.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. On to. Here. All right, next item is Cindy L. Singer Irrevocable Trust, 5 Basin Street.
Yes, so I have this one, if we can put off the site plan, thank you. Okay, so, to remind the commission, this project has, several different components, to the right of the plan, there's a garage, and the garage is going to have inside it a bathroom and an outdoor kitchen, but it's within the footprint of the garage. And we went over that early on. It's pretty minor changes, but the bathroom will just be something so guests don't have to go into the house if they want to go to the bathroom. It's kind of like their easier spot. An outdoor kitchen is something that we can't really build a new structure with floodplain issues without creating a problem, but within the structure, we can do it, and then it's kind of a creative way to use that garage. The other area, the other part of the project, and so this is there's a proposed deck, which is gonna go onto the house, and I feel like there's a better plan view of this. Can we go to the next sheet? Maybe the next one. Going. Oh, this is the structural stuff. Can we go, the site plan, there's another site plan set. That's why I was confused. Good, we're looking at the structural plans. Right there, that should be it. Okay, so that's much better. Now, if we take a look, so we can go over and quickly look at the,
All right, we'll just have to update the share screen so folks,
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it into Adobe so I can use all the tools.
the nice thing about if it's in Adobe, you can just switch tabs.
Right. Right. Stand by.
In me.
Alright, can folks see this plan?
Yes.
Okay, so. So that's the existing condition plan. If we go to the next sheet. As that side, right, okay, so, there's a proposed deck, which is all, upper story.
Yep.
That's all pile supported, and then there's a spiral stair that comes down. It's gonna be significantly elevated above the ground, and those of you who attended the site visit saw sort of how high up that part of the house is. And, so it'll be a pile supported deck. Meets the, requirements, it's attached to the building, it meets all the, elevation requirements and everything, for a building. And it's elevated kind of up above that. The other part of the project. There's a proposed seasonal dock, which we can talk about in a second. But there's a chapter 91, coastal engineering structure that runs along the shore. It's a licensed structure that consists of a revetment on the southern end, there is a bulkhead shown on the license plan, I believe, and then there's also bulkhead shown on the northern side. And currently what you have is a riprap condition that has slumped from when the additional license was issued. And those of you who get on the site visit, we saw that, how it's kind of flattened out a little bit, and it's a little bit concave in the middle. And the stone is undersized. We've given you the letter from Lisa O'Donnell describing that situation. And her plans with the recommended replacement, which is essentially lift it all out, put down filter fabric to prevent the settling, and put down the stone at the right slope to match the original license plan. Any impacts on the beach side are temporary, and sand that has to be moved out of the way to get to the bottom of the revetment if it's buried, because that does occasionally get buried at the very bottom. Would just be put aside and then replaced back over the revetment to match surrounding grade when we're done. And then there's currently a deck structure that is built over the revetment, and was built and permitted by this commission to extend just to mean high water, but not beyond it, so that deck did not require a chapter 91 license. But the stairs are part of the chapter 91 license that deck connects to. So the plan is to remove the deck, and the deck currently extends from the stairs that you see kind of in the middle of the shoreline all the way down to the south, and just over the southern property line. And the plan is, because this is used sometimes to even get in and out of a kayak into the water, but it's used recreationally as well. It's currently at grade from the land side, and it's placed on the revetment. It's not placed on the dune behind the revetment, it's placed on the revetment itself. The idea is we want to try to make it a little bit more resilient, so we lift it up and bring the landward edge back a little bit, staying within the revetment footprint. And bring, in order to keep the footprint the same square footage, bring the southern end up to the north a little bit. So the idea is we're kind of keeping the same deck, but we're having to reconfigure it a little bit so we can try to elevate it up a little bit. And then the other thing that we're doing to try to make it more resilient is using through flow decking. And if you've ever seen videos of through flow, you can get waves that run right through it, and it doesn't have the uplift that a solid decking surface does. So those two elements, and then replacing posts with helical anchors is the other thing that will prevent uplift and prevent the structure from being damaged. It's not a habitable structure, so it can be flooded and inundated completely, and then the water would withdraw and not do any harm. And the structure's been designed to be able to withstand some energy. We would attach to that a seasonal ramp down to a seasonal float. The seasonal float is up on skids or feet to keep it elevated above the substrate at a low tide, which is one of the both marine fisheries and Army Corps requirements. Anchored with helical anchors and elastic rods. So that's sort of the project in a nutshell. The end result is we maintain the chapter 91 structure, which is a requirement of chapter 91. We have to keep that thing in good working order. We install a seasonal dock. We improve the existing deck structure by trying to lift it up as much as we sort of reasonably can without having any dune impacts. And in my updated narrative, I went through a sort of more serious assessment of what functions occur within the revetment itself. And in reality, there is no sand interchange within the revetment area and the beach. The revetment stone is not a compatible dune material, so it doesn't behave like a dune material and interchange. So it doesn't have the standard dune function. I've been unable to reach Jill Provincial at DEP, but one of the things that the Southeast region had us do on a similar case was file a notice of non-significance for dune, for the portion of the dune within the structure footprint. And I know in the past, when I've even looked at thinking about one of those forms on highly developed dune sites, the Northeast region has said, don't even try to file one of those things. But I didn't know whether DEP had wanted us to file that up here. So that was something I think I mentioned to you guys last time. But the concept is the same. And when you guys have been on the commission long enough and you've seen some of these wall reconstruction projects, you know that what we've typically done is while they're still regulated as dune, they really behave more like bank once they're armored like that. And if you look at the old Bill DC filings, where a lot of these things were some of the old Bill DC permits, Bill was a guy who was probably the first consultant in the area who was doing a lot of this work, and he would just say that essentially it makes no sense to regulate it as dune, you regulate it as bank. And DEP would sort of acknowledge it, but still have us address dune stuff. I think the way they did it in the southeast actually makes some sense, but the long and short of it is the dune does not function within the footprint of that revetment itself. The sand is entrained underneath it. The dune behind it, on this site in particular, is held in by the long-term development of the site. This is not a site with a lot of, open sand, beach grass kind of stuff. Turf lawn entrains dune, but there is still function there. The function doesn't really exist within the revetment itself. So when you look at the deck structure and the need to allow for sand movement and all that, it's really less so. I mean, I suppose during a major storm event, if the sod all gets ripped off and sand is moving around, at that point, the sand is going to get carried up and through the through flow decking or over. It really isn't going to interfere in any significant way with dune function. Certainly going to interfere less than it does now with solid decking.
Julie, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Joe. So Tom, this discussion of the dune function and this deck on top of the revetment is good. I mean, it's interesting to hear how you believe it meets the regulations, the state regulations, which, I think those are good arguments that you just made. But I think we're more concerned about the kind of clear indication that it doesn't meet our local regulations. And I was hoping that you could address that piece.
Yes, I mean, so I submitted in both red line and clean narrative update. And in that, I went through the ordinance and the ordinance regulations. This was worked on with both myself and with Lisa Mead. Lisa couldn't attend tonight because she had a conflict. So if we go through this and I need her to be part of the discussion, we may have to continue this, but I did provide this and I go through the regulations, and the long and short of it is you have to distinguish as you go through the ordinance and you read it carefully. Some of the provisions apply to buildings, but not all structures. And you then have in the regulations, you have specific performance standards for different types of structures. There's one performance standards that gives the commission some flexibility on shed elevation. But even more importantly, there's a specific section on decks. And it says that when you reconstruct a deck, there are a couple different things. If you're doing minor work on a deck, you can do it through an RDA. If you're doing really minor work, you can do it through an administrative approval. So if you're just replacing deck boards, you can just get it administratively approved. If you are replacing it entirely, it has to be a notice of intent. And so if you think about it, that makes total sense, because if you're replacing it entirely, now you're disturbing the ground, you're bringing in equipment. So you would want a notice of intent to protect the interest of the ordinance and the regs. And then in that specific section, it says that only an expanded deck footprint and only the portion that is expanded has to be elevated beyond its current condition. So, and that is very clear in the reg. We went through every section of the ordinance and went through everything from, there's clarification on what a substantial improvement is, and the ordinance has a specific line that says for the purposes of implementing the ordinance, it has to do with building expansion or building replacement. There's a whole bunch of exceptions that are in there, but then when you look at actual structure, the standards for deck are spelled out in the regs in that one section on decks. And that's kind of the long and short of it. I can go through each section.
No, you don't have to. I just wanted to say, I mean, I get that a replacement, a expansion, clearly in any case, like an addition and expansion, the expanded part of whatever
Right.
that structure is needs to meet the regulations and so therefore needs to be elevated. And we've seen that many times in the past. Someone wants to add on a part of their deck that has to be elevated. They can leave the other piece alone. They can repair and maintain it. But this is an entirely new deck. You're removing the old one completely. And you're
Yeah.
putting in a brand new deck. It's not even in the exact same location. And you're
So-
telling me that that's not a replacement, but that it's that it's also not an expansion, but I get that it's not an expansion, but it for sure is a replacement. And in our practice, anytime you replace something, whether it's a structure or a fence or a deck, it has to meet the regulations. It has to come into compliance. And that's my position on it.
So when you look at the requirements for a replacement deck, which is in section I of the regs, I think it's section 6I, which if you want to look at the red
replacement.
line, it's
Yeah,
the
I'll go
page
to-
that's got the most
Okay.
red line. I don't have page numbers on my red line
Okay,
version.
replacement deck.
Keep going down. Just, replacement, keep going. Okay, right here. So we're repair, so when you look at this section. So basically it says, construction of a new deck or increasing the footprint of an existing deck. Any modification, including work, in or on the ground. Will require the filing of an RDA, right? So, but we're doing more than that. So you go down and it says, if it involves expansion of an existing deck, the new portion must be elevated at least 2 feet above BFE or 2 feet above the higher. So, and then it says repair or replacement of decking boards, and that's the sort of minor part. But what this is saying is that whatever we're doing, and this does apply to replacing a deck, whatever we're doing, if it's the only an expanded portion of it that would have to be elevated, I think this language allows the commission to approve this. And what we are doing is, since we do have to rip it out in order to repair the revetment, is while I believe this would allow us to put it right back where it is, I think it's in the environmental interest to do a slight reconfiguration so we can elevate it slightly and add the through flow decking and make it at least more resilient than the current condition. And then when you add to that it's within an area that is revetment, as opposed to sitting out in the middle of a sand area. I mean, I think it's an interpretation.
I gotta interrupt. I completely disagree with your argument about what our deck regulation says. You've determined your interpretation of it. I can see that, but I don't read it that way at all. So I guess we just have to agree to disagree on what that section means. I see construction of a new deck or increasing the footprint of an existing deck requires the filing of an RDA, period. If the project involves the expansion of an existing deck, which this is not, this is a new deck, then the portion of the new should be elevated. Yes, I agree with that too. Repair or replacement of decking boards, that's not what this is either. This is a new deck. This isn't repair or replacement, so that doesn't fit. So that's it. That's how I read it. I mean, you
Right, but
can,
there's nothing in there that says that a replacement deck has to be elevated, and it clearly says.
but new structures across the board, you know that, Tom, anywhere on Plum Island, any new structure, especially in the V zone, has to be elevated. This is footprint. This is new footprint. You're removing something and putting in something brand new, and you're saying it doesn't have to be elevated. It's not an expansion of existing, and it's not repair of an existing. It's something new. It's a new structure. So it does have to meet that. That is my position. I can't see anything that you've just shown me that.
And the thing is that in order to read this with the interpretation that I've got, you also have to go through and look at our explanation under all of the other sections where elevation is required and what those individual sections apply to. And this is the section that has to deal with decks.
Mhm.
And There
I'm
are.
not seeing it. I just don't see it.
And so to think about sort of a common sense thing, if you've got one of these older buildings on Plum Island and it's low down to the ground and the door to get out is a step or two down to the ground and somebody's got a deck that's unsafe and needs to be replaced,
Mhm.
it should be able to be replaced at the same elevation so they can go out the door onto a deck.
But it
And-
does, but it isn't though. Maybe you can say it should be, but that's not what the regulations
Well,
say. And in practice, no, when that's not how it works. So that is
So, I
not
mean,
what the regulations say.
Right, so I mean, I think if. You can see what the rest of the commission thinks, but I mean, I think when you read through the entirety of the ordinance and the regulations, and this was not just written by me.
I
this is
have,
also-
I have, Tom. I've read it
I
so many
understand you
times.
have, but I think that when you really dig and look for how it applies to decks, I think our interpretation is right.
Yeah.
And I think especially in this case, I think it also is an interpretation that makes sense because in order to maintain a chapter 91 structure, we have to remove this thing.
Mhm.
And then to put it back, if we're gonna lift this thing up to elevation 19, it makes no sense.
Exactly.
And what we're doing is replacing it, trying to make as much improvement to it as we can, while still keeping it as a functional structure for where it is. And I think that the regulation makes sense. Now, if we need to take a deeper dive into the interpretation of the ordinance and the regs, then I would just look to, continue this and make sure that I can actually have Lisa here. She wasn't able to be here for tonight.
And
Andy,
Tom,
Jim?
yeah, I don't want to say that I disagree with the rationale behind it. Of course, there's certain things like that seem like they make sense. But I'm just saying that is not what the regulations allow. And if we allow it in this case, because it makes sense, there are plenty of other things on the island that someone could argue also make sense to keep at grade in the V zone or to build new in the V zone or another flood zone that aren't actually allowed in the regulations. And that's not our job. That's
So-
all
so
I'm
there
trying
is
to say.
I mean, there's another workaround that we haven't talked about. I still. And I'm somebody I've written regulations for Mass DEP, I've written bylaws, I've worked in this field for a long time, and I'm very comfortable with my interpretation, but there is another way, which would be to recognize public benefit in allowing somebody to maintain a chapter 91 structure, and when that means removing something in order to be able to maintain it, you could issue a variance under that basis. That is a very narrow set of circumstances that wouldn't apply very many places, but I think it does make sense if you so regulate things in a way that have a homeowner or an entity that owns a chapter 91 structure questioning whether they want to maintain the structure because it means removal of something that they can't put back, then that creates a disincentive for that to be done. So,
Andy,
I was just gonna offer that, and it sounds like we've already kind of maybe perhaps reached that point, but recommended essentially at this point a continuance so that we can look at this a little further.
Yeah.
Rather than sort of trying to rehash the same sort of debate about the language, I think, it's valid, for us to look at that a little further before circling back, I think. So, thank you.
So if it had to be raised up to elevation 19, how high would it
11 feet off the ground.
that's all?
Well, it depends whether you're talking, so the leading edge has, 3 feet clearance, I mean, you saw it. And the back edge is resting on the ravine. So. And then the other thing that just makes it, right now. It's not a very wide structure. As far as decks go, right? And it won't be that much wider with this change. I think it goes back another foot with this change. But you can step right on it. Without, any problem from the ground. Then it means we then have to figure out how you get people up on it and it totally removes any connection to the water where people have, slid off the deck into the water. They put kayaks, to king tide, been able to get into a kayak. But, I mean, but there is one avenue to go. I mean, there's a point of, we can go back and forth on who's right on the regulations, but the variance would be something that if you guys think that's worthy of entertaining, we could try to put something together before the next meeting as if we still remain in disagreement, here's a variance request. If that's something that you guys think might be worthy.
I'd have to think about it for a while, but, Barb, go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of. The revetment itself, the language indicates that it was, the stone was originally designed to be larger and so it wasn't installed properly. Can you just, is that true?
So it's an after the fact permitting of a revetment. The revetment had been there for some time before it was licensed. And
But the way it's written implies that it was originally designed to be larger stone.
So it's a licensed revetment, and in evaluating repairing it, the structural engineer's current assessment is the stone is undersized.
Okay, maybe you need to change the wording.
I'll take a look at how I worded that, but basically, in order to replace and repair it, the recommendation is to put appropriate size stone there to try to minimize future future maintenance of it. And it was, Plum Island was full of a hodgepodge of revetments. Some of them were just piles of cinder block. You guys have seen the mooring block walls that were put up in the 70s. And some of these things go back significantly in time. And this thing is stone, although there were also some concrete pillows from where people had put concrete, they put concrete bags and just let them get wet and become concrete. And so the density of that and all that just isn't appropriate and lends itself to get knocked around.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I just want to make sure that, because it says that it was originally designed to have larger stone. And so
I'll take a look at how I worded that. I may have
yeah, it just made me start to think. It made me start to think that
it was
what?
The material that's there is the way it was permitted. Is with
Okay, that was, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but
Okay.
the problem is it's when we maintain these things, Chapter 91 always wants you to maintain it in a way that
It's
makes it
commensurate with how
a
it was
more
built.
durable
Yes,
repair, right? And you see that on the city's waterfront when they've done repair projects, they don't come in and replace it with the exact same material sheet piles sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes they use a different material, but it's still a repair in the Chapter 91 law.
Yeah.
Unless you change its configuration. So, yeah, so I'll go back and look at the wording since we're gonna have the luxury of the continuance.
and I think also the wording, it says that obviously you need to remove it to replace the stone, and then rebuild, but you really don't need to rebuild in order to replace, to fix the revetment under the Chapter 90 license. You don't need to put the new deck on. You just do need to remove it though.
It does need to be removed, but I think the homeowner would be in a real tough spot. I don't think she would want to repair the revetment if it meant she couldn't put the structure back, and she would probably just basically fix the structure in place and live with a failing seawall until somebody makes her repair it. But the ideal is, because that, if you remember the site, And it was this way when she bought it, you go out the doors of the house and there's not much land, and then you've got that structure which gives you some utility, and so it really means removal of a big chunk of her active area for enjoying the outdoors on the water side of the home. So it would put her in a spot, and I think it's a reasonable thing, you know, if you think of it from her point of view, from the living at that location, buying the home with that structure there. That structure was permitted by the commission. You know, at the same time that the Chapter 91 stuff was done. And I think it's a reasonable expectation and hope to be able to rebuild it in some fashion there.
I think it's more the way it's written. It says it needs to be removed and rebuilt. It needs to be removed, but it doesn't need to be rebuilt. Like you said, that's something that the homeowners is requesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can look at the language, but I think from the point of view of the homeowner, it needs to be removed and rebuilt. That's sort of, that is a part of their property, and they're not looking at this as a project to
I
get
think, that's a homeowner. It's
No,
really
I understand
the
that. I understand that.
technical requirement.
I'll take a look at that language.
So on the vertical boards.
Yeah, I've got to call into,
Beneficial.
right, I've got to call into Lisa O'Donnell, to see if we can at least open it up, or there's another alternative that.
In my mind, that defeats the purpose of the wetland. You got those vertical boards, the waves coming in.
Yeah, and they were, I mean, that the vertical boards have been there since that revetment was built, or since the deck was built, and my understanding was for ice control, so.
But that's not
Yeah, I mean,
not a Wetlands Protection Act.
yeah, let me see if there's more, and I think the other part of it was when a kayak was being put in, it prevented the kayak from kind of diving under. So. Well, I mean. If you think of it as a dock, it makes sense. But let me see what we can do to see if we can open that up somehow or whatever.
So anything that's gonna cause big waves there, it's not a northeast storm, it's a wind out of the northwest, I think, when I looked at it.
Yeah, there's the modeling, floodplain modeling, if you look at the flood map of that section of Plum Island, and you look at the sort of oblong shape of the velocity zone, and just put a vector arrow into that end of the sort of shape and follow it backwards. It's kind of figuring that it's coming almost from the boat ramp at the Salisbury State Park.
Okay.
Right, all the way across.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I fully buy that modeling. I think the velocity zone mapping on Plum Island is a little bit weird. Why we have a velocity zone with no AO zone behind it on the ocean side in some spots. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but regardless. Most of the erosion that I see in the basin comes from currents and swirling.
Not really that.
But when wave action hits, some of these areas are just not, you know, not able to cope with it. You know, because the velocity zone in some parts of the basin is actually mapped coming from the ocean over in Newbury, but here this is mapped from coming across the Merrimack. So. And I think it's been some of those storms that have had some wave action and some current that have kind of knocked things around and caused us to settle.
Julie, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't believe that those vertical panels were ever part of any permitting process, and they're certainly not. They certainly wouldn't have been allowed. So I think that they were probably placed by the homeowner after the fact, like Tom's saying, to prevent kayaks from going underneath the deck, or whatever erosion or water lifting up the deck panels. But they're not, they should not be there, and they should not be allowed to be left there.
Yeah, I have pictures going back from before she purchased the property and they were there at the time, and I can look and see if we go all the way back to when the prior owner. Permitted that, but I believe they actually were on there from when it was originally built.
You think it was part of the permitting? You think that was part of
I
the,
don't.
like the
I'll have to
design?
look I don't know that the permit plans were that detailed.
Yeah,
for this.
regardless, if the revetment right now is being renovated and rebuilt, et cetera, those need to come out and they need to stay out. That's not something that CZM or DEP would ever allow right now, whether or not they allowed it in the past.
We can, we'll take a look at that. I'll look at that further with Lisa O'Donnell and again, we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Couple of minor things. In the narrative, you talk about mitigation areas. But there's nothing on the planning. Page 5 on the Wetlands Protection Act.
Let me look. That might be I don't do it as much as Bill used to do, but I do occasionally do cut and paste.
Oh, I know, I could tell.
Yeah. The older I get, the more.
If you don't put seagrass on the scenes.
Or call it the Amesbury Riverfront.
Those are paragraphs to the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right,
Page 5.
okay. I'll make a note. I'll go back and.
And then you also talk about appraised value, and there's a supplement that talks about that would have that appraised value. I don't think that's the name
Okay. I know they went through ZBA and I believe there was. I mean, it's a fairly obvious thing. I think just the assessed value of the building. And not the land is like $800,000 or $900,000. I mean, I don't think we need an appraisal on this one.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting. you-
No, I know, but I thought when I wrote the original narrative, there was supposed to be an appraisal, but I'll figure that out.
Okay. Do we have anything else? Anybody?
One other thing, there was a discussion of an access plan, but being submitted prior to construction, but I guess
Yeah.
shouldn't that be done long before part of this,
So
actually?
we've talked. In getting ready for this, we've talked to different contractors, and depending on who's hired, they have different ways to get in. One would come in from the front and sort of drop equipment down onto matting carefully installed and come up to it from the landward side, which seems really awkward. You remember how much the ornate gate that you walk through and.
Going over the house.
And you do it, there are ways to do a crane over the house if you can get it down that street, right? I mean, it's,
Yeah, there's that.
I mean, I don't know if you know the building, I mean, when I talk about the Fleet Center in Newbury. The house that's kind of got the domed roof that's on the,
Oh, yeah.
right next door to that. Those two neighbors, neither one of them lives there anymore, but they were at each other. And, one had to put a deck in on the backside using a crane because. They were just gonna oppose any equipment going back. So cranes are possible, but I think during the site visit, the owner did point out that. There is a drivable way down onto the beach at the end of the street at the end of Basin.
I like that. It didn't look to me like it was navigable.
Yeah, and so the thing is, what I was hoping is. I can spell out the different options, but a final access plan would be submitted prior to work that will include however we're gonna protect whatever route in. That is, and coming from the street is very difficult, given how to kind of circumnavigate those tight sides on the house, and then there's, as you saw, there's a lot of landscaping that I'm sure the homeowner doesn't want to lose, and the risk of tearing that up once it's torn up, as you know, we don't get to replace it in kind. And, you know, there's a possibility of even using a barge to go into it through a barge.
Yes, Andy.
I was just gonna suggest that rather than spending a whole lot of
Yeah.
time in an extended hearing process, it's already been continued a number of times, working through that.
Yeah,
That to Barbara's point, perhaps coming back with a plan and some detailed information, not extensive, but simple enough to clarify the range of options that might
Yeah.
be needed. So that the commission at the time of approval can incorporate the access route that you're taking and how that's gonna be done. So that there isn't a follow-up need for review by the commission, there isn't a follow-up need for review by the agent. It's already agreed to how the work will actually be done as well.
okay.
So it'd be simpler, in my view, if you're able to include that in whatever comes back to the commission, so that that's also taken into account and the order of conditions can include that.
Yeah, I think we'll do that, and then I think we'll include probably the most likely is, you know, I've got to look again at that access down, of somehow using that access down, and that, you know, what that would involve, and that we would commit to doing some level of monitoring for that. And then the other potential options are by barge or overland, that would involve something like what I described in the NOI, with significant planning and protection. And we could always come back if it's something different than one of those.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, do we have anything else for now? Anything for the public? I don't see any digital raised hands, so you're looking for a continuance.
Yep.
Take a motion for continuance to, what's the day I'm not gonna be here? 19th?
So, second,
All right, roll call, Julie Gottfredson. I can't hear you, Julie.
I'm sorry, I thought I said the wrong thing. Yes.
Okay. Barb Riley,
Yes.
Anna Daisy?
Yes.
Steve Moore?
yes.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is William Pike, 10 I Street, which we have found out they don't have a complete application, so we're gonna table this until the next meeting. All righty, next item is enforcements violations. Do you have anything new on that?
That also, I think I'm gonna try to get more of an update for the next meeting, which will be me reaching out to Lisa and Lee's firm to see if they still represent the homeowners and seeing what their plan is. And most recently, they represented that they would be going through the NOI process to get an after the fact NOI, but we haven't heard anything from the firm since, I think, this summer. You know, another option would be that they've removed the structure. Andy and I did a drive by and it looked like they might have been getting ready to move this. It's like a trailer on wheels, so
Oh, you talking to S Street?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've
So,
actually just recently been engaged on that,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we've been going through some math, trying to figure out the limit for the 20%. Because if we build something there, we can't exceed the development standards. We just completed that, and we're trying to set up a meeting with Lisa's office to sort of configure what it is that's gonna be the subject of an NOI. So we are, it's slow, but
It should be noted that perhaps what's there right now, though, may still not be acceptable under the regs during that interim time. So depending on how long they want to take to come back to the.
Yeah, I'll
commission, it's been
let-
flagged for quite a while.
right, no, I'll let, you know, Lisa and those guys deal with that, but we are, you know, part of it was just, as you guys know, I've been crazy busy still reeling from all the work I've been over in Salt for the last year, and finally getting my head almost above water. But we are, you know, we are actually making some progress on that. We're gonna have to make some, they had a tentative plan they were gonna move forward with, and we're gonna have to, I think, downsize something a little bit to make it work.
Can I just suggest that I agree with what Andy said, which is that it's been over a year easily. I mean, it's been there since like for like 5 years, but it's been over a year since the commission first issued a violation. And we've been receiving this same, what you're saying, which is that we're putting together architectural plans. We're going to submit a notice of intent. We're working on it. We hired an architect. We're going to get back to you and let you know with our progress. We're going to change it for a year. And so, I guess I'm agreeing with Andy that at some point it's a violation that's just, but it has to be removed, or we need a plan more immediately than what you just said, which is 0 timeframe.
I think a status update and approach for the next commission's next meeting, at least as to what the plan is from their end, is a reasonable thing to expect at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think we're gonna be able to move pretty quickly after we have that meeting and just go over the numbers, make sure that we've actually dotted i's and crossed t's on what it is we're proposing. Millennium's been working on this a lot longer than I have with Lisa's office, and like I said, I've only recently gotten brought on, and you know, first thing I did was try to figure out how we make sure what they want to do is gonna fit the regs. So, so my goal is to have us come in with an NOI that you guys can approve.
Right,
So
but we need an update.
Understood,
next meeting,
understood,
for
and
the next
I'll,
meeting.
right, I'll convey that to Lisa. I think it wouldn't be bad if you guys also want to email her to that, but you can add me to the CC on that stuff now,
Okay,
if you want to do that.
cause we're trending toward a violation.
No, understood. I've
Enforcement
sat in a number of meetings. It's been on the agenda now for a while. I get that.
Okay.
And I know that the client is right now anxious to move forward. It's been the workload of Millennium and myself, and now Millennium and I've sort of finished our initial stuff, and then we need Lisa's time, so it's just.
Okay.
You know,
I just have a question about this. Since that's greater than 20%, if you were to build a new structure, and any NOI that you would submit would be for a new structure, correct? It wouldn't be, so that trailer's been sitting there for what, 6 years or something? You know, shouldn't it be removed like right away and then have an NOI for any new structure?
Agree, because it's not going to be the thing that remains, that
Yeah.
trailer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's our advice, and
yeah, well, I'll commit to, we'll get you an update for the next meeting.
Okay.
Like, I feel like it's more Lisa's place to be talking about that level of things. I got brought in to help them with the NOI. And there are some question marks on whether we count one thing or another, and there's one way where the math actually works, where the structure fits the number, but I suspect we're gonna have to downsize. But that's kind of where things are again.
okay. All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay, on to our business meeting and approval of the minutes from October 7th, 2025. Anybody got any changes or comments?
Motion to approve.
I'll second. Roll call, Julia Godfreyson,
Yes.
Barb Riley,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Shannon Daisley,
Yes.
and I'll go yes. Do we have any other Plum Island updates?
I don't think so. Yeah.
That's good. The one thing that I was asked at the Community Preservation Committee meeting was if the commission had any ideas for projects for next year to or for this year to submit. I would say think about that and we can bring it in.
When's the deadline?
Beginning of December, I think, yeah,
It's beginning of
December.
so.
Have we recommended anything in the past?
Didn't we get?
Maybe tangentially. Was the resiliency committee one that was perhaps not necessarily the commission per se, right? The committee.
Yeah, there's that one. Didn't we get anything
We
Where
got,
did the
we
money-
got CPA money for,
for the fence?
yeah,
For what? Julie?
We got CPA money years and years ago for, I
Well-
think, was it sand or fencing on Plum Island or plantings or something like that?
Oh, yes, we did, okay.
And yeah, but not
Remote.
not since then, at least.
Okay.
That's money for the fence on Low Street,
That's what I
but
thought.
that wasn't through the commission.
Exactly, that was through open space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right, Mike
But-
took care.
Yeah, and there's still money left there.
Good.
Friday, December 12th is the deadline.
And we have
December.
plenty of Moby mats. So we've thought about that in the past, like, should we apply for money for Moby mats, et cetera? But we have that. And then in terms of plantings, it's DCR property. When we're talking about Plum Island, they like to be in charge of all that stuff. So, yeah, unless there's something else on the mainland that people can think of.
Yeah, well, let's think about it and, if anybody's got any ideas, let Kelsey know and we'll, go from there.
Where's the criteria, Joe?
If you go to the city's website and go to the Community Preservation Committee, and then, on the left side bar, there's sort of, options, the usual bar there, there's, criteria, that are, kind of summarize what the kind of criteria that they look at.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we got anything else? I'll take a motion.
We're gonna do adjourn.
Second.
I have to vote on this. All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed? Okay.
I would recommend, only because we have a remote member, do a
For
roll call.
God's sakes.
I'm sorry.
All right.
It's just.
I don't care, I wanna
Did really well otherwise.
roll call, Julie Gottfredson,
Yes.
Bob Riley,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Janet Daisley.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hey.
Thanks for your CPA money.